technical difficulty. Welcome. Thank you, May already. Thank you very much. Go ahead and record who's missing and any time constraints. Ron, do you want to start?
We do not have Brandy Macchia here tonight. Carl Burnside is desperately trying to be here, so he just called to let us know he's running into some difficulties, but he hopes to be here. I don't believe we have time constraints tonight from our team.
Okay.
We are missing Joe Castellano and no time constraints.
Right. So we have the minutes from last week. Any questions, comments, changes need to be made to the minutes last week? Great, here.
I don't know what order you want to do this. We typically talk about elephants, and we have something that's not necessarily an elephant, but it's something that we need on the record before bargaining.
Okay, so so you don't want to record as an elephant, but record as a
area, high level.
I call it
area of concern.
a cloud over discussions.
Okay. Just record it in
Because elephants are typically something that prevents bargaining from moving forward.
Correct.
And I'm not saying this rises to that level, but I would be quite dishonest if I said that public comments that's being made from the superintendent's office at recent press conferences don't put a cloud over the discussions. And I just want to say, we're here to talk about compensation tonight. So on the record, TALC's not opposed to fiscal responsibility. But the claims about waste and overspending that are being used to justify cuts are disconcerting to us. Very disconcerting. Educators are not lines on a spreadsheet. And as we were talking about before, our phones have been ringing off the hook. Every non-renewal, consolidation, staff reduction, it impacts classrooms, it impacts student support, and it impacts school climate. And since these comments were made publicly at a press conference where we were not afforded the ability to attend, we feel the need to state publicly that, and some of these comments were made about TALC without using the word TALC. That TALC is not the union, it's Lee County educators advocating for employees, asking questions, challenging decisions, and insisting on transparency. It's not obstruction. It's our responsibility. People pay dues to this organization, and it's our responsibility to our members, our educators, and to the students to ask these questions.
Okay, going back to the minutes. Okay, we'll make sure that we'll mark you off from last week's minutes. Thank you. Any other changes we need to make to the minutes? Okay. Can we agree to the minutes as is?
Sure.
Look at that, starting off on a orange highlight. Could be a great night. Okay. I think last time we left off, we had finished all of Article 7. I believe 5, was it? Yeah. Go ahead, Kurt.
We've got one thing while we have Article 7 open that we wanted to address, okay. And it was 7.01. I don't know that I have a story. I have a quick option.
Okay.
Maybe it's housekeeping. I don't know if you agree, Ron. Can you pull up 7.01? Yeah, just so I can. It's this very clear language. I'm being sarcastic. Very clear language that Amy and I wrote.
Oh.
Last year. Taking no responsibility for it, even though I write it.
We did write that for you.
So it's this first line. The basic workday for teachers shall average 7 3/4 hours on all days when students are in attendance, with 30 minutes per week for the purpose of planning. I wanted to propose to strike everything after that comma, with 30 minutes per week for the purpose of planning. Just for clarity's sake, I guess for a couple of reasons. Teachers get more than 30 minutes per week for planning, and I think you can infer that, by reading it a certain way. And the 30 minutes per week for the purpose of planning originally went back to an extra 30-minute day, which we're not doing anymore with this 38.75 hours. So I guess an option would be to strike everything, including and after the word with, and just ending the sentence with the word attendance.
I'll just comment, I think, if I recall, that we opted to leave that in there because it was the kind of status quo at that point with the 30 minutes, because the buildings had already had their calendars with the additional 30 minutes per day, and we didn't want to give the impression that that was going away at that point. I don't see any other issue with that, because, so do we, the additional 45 minutes per week also was just kind of at that point to establish the process for doing that. Does that have to be addressed as well in this then, or are we?
I'd have to go back and look at the minutes. I think we struck everything else on that page. That additional 45 minutes per week, wasn't that an option to strike that waiver process, or no?
I thought we talked about it, but I don't think we did it actually,
Was it-
so we may have to revisit that.
Then maybe that's the second option, is to strike everything from the additional 45 minutes all the way down. I mean, at this point, I guess two things. The reason why that part is in the contract is because we implemented the extra 45 minutes partway through the year. Moving forward, the principal has the authority to develop the schedule at the school. Planning time was adjusted to 375 minutes weekly to accommodate, or to, because of the extra 45 minutes for planning that's here. So I don't know that a waiver process is necessary for moving forward into next year. So I guess option 2 would be strike everything from the additional 45 minutes per week all the way down to 2D and get rid of all that as well. I would go one line above that as well. Yep.
I don't see any reason why that would be the.
Do you want to treat that as housekeeping, or do you want to?
Yeah, I would think that would be more or less.
Agree with that?
I mean, the article's open anyway, so
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care how we adjust it or how we address it.
Okay, so if you both are good with that for housekeeping, then we'll just orange highlight that for housekeeping. Okay.
I also think it should be like stated that there's no longer that one day you stay an extra half an hour anymore.
Well, the schools might have that in their calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
They would have the option to still do that if they.
Yeah, the language still allows for that. It says shall average 7 3/4 hours. Right. So yeah, they still have that flexibility.
All right. Starting off our day full of agreements. Okay. So,
15%, get this out of here quicker.
that's right. Well, where shall we go next?
I thought that there was one of our contract committees that might have a recommendation, and that might be a good way to start, and then we get into the budget presentation from there.
We also discussed at was it last labor management or sometime about codifying the virtual in-service days in the contract. We're open to doing that too. It doesn't matter which order we attack these in.
Let's do that before we do the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have an option, Kurt? No. What article is that, 7?
7.03. 1, where it talks about, it just talks about preschool days. And then Item 3 talks about in-service days.
There's something for professional duty days though.
That's 2.
Thank you.
Professional duty, yes, item 2. So they,
So, I mean, for me, and yeah, on the calendar currently, the 3 of the 4 in-service days are virtual.
Correct.
And so, if that's the way, and again, my argument always is the 4th one kind of can't be, because you can't virtually hand your keys in. So like, yeah. All right, yeah, so I think, if that's a direction I think we all want to continue in, we should make that change as well, in the contract.
I think that was the recommendation from the calendar committee, and we have 2 years worth of calendars.
Okay.
No reason not to say, and we did agree, right, the last in-service day has to be.
Yeah, because you can't virtually hand in your keys, right? I mean, that's really kind of the idea, is that final sign off on everything you're supposed to have done before you go, and you just can't really do that virtually, so.
So what do we want to say there for professional duty days in the language? We just want to make a virtual option is determined by the calendar committee?
I was just gonna say that on both of the upcoming calendars, there's no in-service days at all listed. Like we haven't had in-service days really in a long time. They're all just part of, they're not even on the schedule.
They're preschool week.
Right, there's preschool days.
One of those days is an in-service day, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying on the calendar, they're not listed as in-service days like they were in the past.
Okay.
Like we used to have the February in-service day back in a long time. We haven't had like a true in-service day that was on
To
the
the front.
calendar
Yeah.
like we did in the past.
Yeah, since COVID, we moved it to the beginning of the school year. Oh,
we're saying in-service days, I think we're actually speaking about professional duty days. And I guess I have a line, if you want to consider as an option. So I guess an option would be professional duty days may be conducted virtually. Remotely, yeah, that's fine. As determined through the calendar committee process. I suppose I'm suggesting that we add this to 7.03 item 2.
any other
Can we
questions?
do that?
Questions or comments on that one? Rob and then Iris.
Yeah, I'm not trying to. I don't think the days are conducted. I think they're held, well, no, it's up to Kurt, it's his option.
I'm not married.
Carried out, completed,
Complete, it's fine, yeah.
Person change it to completed. They're completed.
Sorry, Kurt. That's fine.
So are we still keeping the number 3, which is in-service days?
Yeah. We still have an in-service day during preschool week. So this would count for, when's the first one? After quarter 1, after quarter 2, quarter 3.
January, March.
And then the 4th one would be in person because you have things we have to do that can be virtual. So yeah, this would only be the first 3 duty days, not the in-service.
We still have 2 in-service days a year. It just depends on where they're located in the county. There's still 2. Okay, we wanna test this?
All right, we'll test this for the remote work language, remote professional duty days. And share your schedule. Remote professional duty days. All right, we have made an agreement. Good job. 3 in a row. Okay, where to next?
Ready for the supplement committee presentation?
I'm stepping out of my facilitator role for a moment and just presenting for the committee. And I do want to thank the committee members for this because it was not fun work at all. We had to work with what we had, and supplements probably hadn't been touched in several years. So we knew that some of our supplements needed some attention, some hadn't been used in several years. Wasn't much accountability to them. So as part of the committee, we went through each of the supplements, decided which ones we needed to get some attention to. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Just interrupting.
Yeah.
You go to the next one. Okay. All right, so we took a very collaborative approach. We had principals, we had regional superintendents on there. TALC had some great members on their committee as well. And we met several times. We had discussed the overall needs of the supplements. We all know it needed more money. We didn't have that option this year. So we had to work with what we had this year. So we evaluated data from surrounding districts to kind of see where we were. We did some competitive benchmarking. We established a firm agreement on the need for increased accountability measures. We reallocated funding from underutilized supplements based on some of the performance data, but just some data that we had. We are gonna have a disclaimer on all supplements. This is not the actual wording, but it's close. Failure to complete all of the requirements of the supplement could prohibit you from getting a supplement again in future years and up to having to repay it. So we want to make sure we're following those job descriptions. So our key reallocations and our adjustments, grade level and department chair. Right now, there was a minimum of 1 person on the department or grade level, and we received the grade level chair supplement. Now you have to have at least 2 people in order to get that supplement. We got a lot of our reallocation money from just doing that. Administrative designee is exclusively assigned to schools currently without an assistant principal. That was a change from the past. Kevin?
I think that was probably a return to the spirit of the supplement.
Correct.
It was originally designed for those schools without APs, and then there was a lot of creep because there was not a lot of oversight. And so I think it's a return to the original intent of that supplement.
Thank you. And then we streamlined some supplements. So we had grant communication contact supplements. Those are reallocated. There wasn't much oversight in those either. So we reallocated the funds for that. The next one. So some of our recommendations are, we want to align the elementary grade level chair to the same thing as the secondary grade level chair. That's for the minimum, the lowest, between 2 and 3 members on the team. Currently, it was $526.50 for elementary. We brought it up to the $810, which is what the minimum was, the lowest for secondary schools. We also wanted to align the academic coach. I'm sorry, that's the academic competition coach. Not like a lit coach, but the ones that take them to the book battle and 5th grade math team competition. They were getting $607.50. Everybody else was getting $810. We just brought it all up to $810. And one other thing on this, when you sign up for this academic competition coach, you will need to pick from a drop down of the approved competitions, and you do need to attend those competitions. Testing coordinator. And by the way, the team came up, we knew how much money we had to reallocate, and the team decided on which supplements they felt for this year needed the most attention. We'd love to give some, money to all supplements, so we prioritized. So testing coordinator, we currently don't have, from 0 to 99, but we created that band, and currently they are getting 1,215, we're keeping that the same. Then we said from 100 to 599, we're increasing that from 1215 to 1750. From 600 to 999 students, increasing from 1750 to 1620. And then 1,000 to 1499, 1620 to 1822. And I feel like I'm missing the 1,500 plus. I think I left that one off there, but that one is going up. Also an increase from, I think right now it's like 2,200. I think that's going up to, I'm gonna possibly say 2,500, but I could be wrong on that one. We also increased the amount for the yearbook at each level, elementary, middle, and high. Here's the current, there's the recommended. Interest club sponsor was our lowest supplement, so we almost doubled that. Then we went and increased all grade chair and department chair supplements by $70. And then the elementary music director, we increased that to what the secondary or middle school music director did as well. We did, the supplement committee did not do this, but one of the reasons why we wanted to increase this, we did change the job description for the department chair and the grade level chair to include support, make copies and grades for guest teachers. So we recognize that. Go ahead.
When you say we change the job description.
The district.
Change the job.
Thank you.
And I'll talk about the testing coordinator too when we get
Okay.
a little further on.
And then next one. ESOL contact. Because there's no longer gonna be, we really haven't had ESOL departments at schools, but the recommendation was this, there was not gonna be that supplement anymore for the department chair for ESOL. We would increase the ESOL contact supplements by a little bit, by about 200 in some cases. And created a new supplement for AVID coordinators. They do a lot of work as well. And then athletics, we did change those. We had $121,000 the committee did to allocate to increasing some athletic supplements. And so some of those are being reallocated as well. Okay, any questions or comments right now? Tina, let me get you a microphone.
I noticed that you put on there the music teacher supplements are going up. Is there
Not a music teacher.
music director, elementary music director? Is that one specifically chosen for a reason? And I guess my follow-up question would be, I know because I'm in the arts that it's a lot of work, and I'm
Right.
wondering why visual arts and other
And it actually might be
specials didn't
arts
go up.
director. I'm gonna have to fact check myself on that one, now that I'm thinking about it. We were trying to align them to the secondary ones.
Okay, again, why visual arts? were-
I don't know, and it might actually be that way. I just have to check my notes again.
Okay, can you
Okay.
get back to me on that?
Of course, yeah.
And I want to talk about the testing coordinator one. There's kind of a movement that I like, which is, I'll just call it a load-based movement as opposed to a number of heads movement. It can best kind of be described, I think, through special instructional, where instead of just assigning counselors or psychologists on the number of students a school has, but rather the number of students that need that service. And so when we looked at testing coordinators, there's an idea percolating, and honestly, this may look different next year for testing coordinators, because there may be testing coordinators who do, like a high school testing coordinator may do a heck of a lot more testing than an elementary school coordinator, but we just don't have all of that data to show kind of what the load level is, even for schools within. There may be some high school testing coordinators that do more testing than other high school testing coordinators. So really, because we didn't have the data, this is the change we made this year on this. Like I said, there's probably another bite at that apple next year, once we've gotten data. We've committed to getting that data. And then I think, overall, this was about $360,000.
More than that, about 450.
About $450,000, and I'm just gonna be honest with you, you see the limited amount of damage we were able to do with almost $500,000. This chair has on time and time again asked for the district to pay specific attention to this. The administrator who was from the high school department took a real interest in coaching. And honestly, with their kind of fix, that fix alone was almost $4 million. Just on the coaching side, to put us competitive with Collier and Charlotte.
That was a proposal.
But I mean, that's the amount of money we're talking about. On the coaching side alone, to get our supplements comparable with Charlotte and Collier. And we're not even talking about the academic side. So again, I will take any amount of money people want me to take out of our bargaining authority and address more supplements. Just understand as of now, that will mean smaller raises for people. So just like we had to do with health insurance for years and years to kind of cajole the district into saying, yeah, that maybe deserves its own pile. And even though nobody else does it, if we're gonna make any serious inroads, it's gonna be with the idea that we put a certain amount of money aside every year outside of the bargaining authority to tackle these supplements in a meaningful way. Because really, the district runs on these, and it also runs on the free labor of all of its employees, not just the teachers, but the administrators who stay late. And so it is a free labor business, but we can certainly have more acknowledgement of the work that people do outside of their everyday job. But again, the way we're gonna make serious dents is to have a devoted pile outside of what we do for bargaining and what we do for insurance. And again, the fix on the athletic side was $4 million. I think the total supplement budget is what, probably 7?
No, like 5.
Okay, yeah, so 5, 6 for, not 6, 7, Hannah. 5, 6 for the total amount spent on supplements every year, and the fix on the athletic side is just $4 million more. That's how far we are behind every other district, or at least our contiguous districts, in at least being competitive. So that's what I have to say again, to beg for more money for supplements.
Anna?
I have 2 questions. The first one for testing coordinator. I see that like the last amount was to 1,000 to 1,499. Is in the contract, we currently have 1,500 plus, 1,501 plus students. Is that amount going up or staying the same?
It is, and that was, I just said, that I think I inadvertently left that one off,
Okay.
so we'll add that one there.
And then my second question is, looking at the grade level chair in the elementary side, the amount that's listed here, it says that's 1 to 3 full-time staff members, and then there's also 4+ full-time staff members. That is $1,012.50. Are we only increasing the 1 through 3 staff members, or are both of them going up?
So the 1 to 3 staff members was at $526.50, but the 1 to 3 members on middle school was $810.
Okay.
So we first brought elementary grade level chairs, so 1 to 3, up to 810. Then after all of that, every single grade level chair and every single department chair supplement went up an additional 7.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the supplement committee recommendation? Do you need that final decision now before you make a recommendation? I would like to. Okay, give me 1 second, I'll check.
I have a question, maybe you can answer this. So on the testing coordinator, it's not based on the student population, based on the amount of tested students.
Currently, it's based on student population exclusively. We'd like to move to a data-driven model.
Is that what you,
That
is that what you're?
Yeah, that is, but we just didn't have it, we just didn't
We
have
don't have the
it.
data to figure out by
Yeah.
school how many kids.
And again, I think within the same level,
Yeah.
you know, there may be a school, high school that does a lot more than another high school. And so, you know, we just don't have the data on that.
One second, and I'll be right there with you. Okay. Tina, we did not increase the art one because at every level, it was already the same amount. It was when there was a differing amount with, between the levels that we increased the music one.
I already have a microphone. Look at that.
Look at that.
I just was curious too about the athletics, varying amounts up to $121,000. Is there a conversation around which athletics, which departments or which sports are being chosen and how that money would be allocated? I think that it would, I'd like to see a little bit more transparency around which sports are being chosen.
And I do have that information, it's just I did not have a chance to update that. I can try to pull up that data. And it was, the committee allowed Jeff, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, the committee kind of allowed the high school representative to do that. I think, Amy, didn't we add competitive cheer, right? And then we added a
Had a
spring
competitive cheer, yep, and spring
cheer,
cheer.
spring, just, I don't wanna say regular cheer, but, because they're all
Give it
very
to,
difficult, but
Tina.
spring non-competitive cheer was added as well, because they cheer into basketball and stuff like that.
I'm gonna share the, so Anna, here are the, recommended increase. Questions or comments on that? Is it the green are the reason?
I can't read any of it from back then.
Yeah, be right there, microphone. Thanks.
So right now for cheerleading, we have just a supplement in there. Is that supplement going up? Are we adding additional cheerleading?
So I believe the one that you're talking about for competitive cheer, you mean? That's
No, there's, it says cheerleading, then you have competitive cheer.
right, they're different.
Yeah.
Competitive cheer is different than cheerleading.
I know something was mentioned about how they have cheering in the fall and the spring.
And the
we do
winter.
basketball games.
Yes,
So are there,
so they'll have
One
a
for
fall, winter
fall.
and spring, yep. No, I don't think we did add one for the spring. Oh, yeah, we did right here, spring cheerleading sponsor, yep,
so they'll have fall, winter and spring, 3 different
Correct.
supplements?
Mhm.
And then also a competitive cheer.
Yep.
So we have one cheerleading coach, I'll make 4 supplements.
if they do all 4 of them, then yes.
Okay.
Not that's not occurring at all schools. They have different coaches for different for competitive cheer than they do regular cheer.
Was there any consideration into any of the middle school athletics or Special Olympics coach for elementary schools or anything like that, or is it just strictly go to high schools?
At this point, just for high school for this year, yeah.
And just one other question, does the funds for this, is this part of our bargaining authority or is it separate?
No. It's not part of bargaining authority.
It always,
She wants, if we get $10 million, she wants to know if we have to subtract this from the 10. No.
no, this is already budgeted in with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna stop sharing here.
All right, sorry, but I have a couple questions.
That's okay, go ahead.
And I hate to be the dead
You're
horse
fine.
here, however. Being an art teacher myself, and knowing the amount of work I've put in the district for the past 15 years. So the art director currently gets $405,
Correct.
and the music director originally was at $607, which is $200 more. And then is now going to get an increase. Again, knowing how much work I've put in and how much my co-workers have put in, like, is there any way to address that and up that amount coming up? And a follow-up to that, there are very few tech teachers, but I do know ours does the school news on a daily basis, and it's a lot of work before and after school in addition. And there's no supplement allotted for that type of thing at the elementary level, or middle, evidently. So if we can get that addressed, that would be great. And then I have another question on a different slide.
I can let you know that we had a limited amount for this year, and we knew that this would be a multi-year process. So we addressed the ones that we saw were out of the line, whether within our own district, and really we just did within our own district. We knew where some of our biggest needs were. So for this year, unless the committee would like to meet again and redo all of the funding, that could be something we could absolutely put on to the agenda for next year, but it would have to be a committee agreement for what they want to do this year.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, sorry.
So on one of your slides, maybe number 2, and that's just my lack of knowledge on this. Grade level department chair, it says increasing minimum staffing to 2 employees per grade level or department. How many grade levels or department chairs do we have in this situation where there's single?
A lot,
Okay,
especially the secondary level, a lot.
so does that mean they will?
They will
be
not get
getting
this
those
up supplement. When you're department of one, no, it will not be a supplement anymore. Go ahead.
But it's all right, I'll be loud. So this often shows itself in the CTE world.
I'm sorry.
All right, I'll wait. You're the first person I know that said I'm not loud, so I appreciate the compliment. So in the high school world, this really showcases among the CTE group, where the person who teaches automotive or nursing, they would be a department of one. But what we have done is we have allowed a CTE department head now. And so the automotive, the nursing, those CTE people and any other people that are a department of one, like maybe in the arts, they could be lumped together in an arts department, and then they would qualify, one person would qualify for a department head there. And again, I think we also always have the option to split it between 2 people at that point, so it could. So yes, it was an elimination of departments of one, but it was also the creation and the ability to create like a CTE department and have it be a bigger department and maybe split the thing between 2 people or 1 person. That's kind of where the logic was on that one.
All right. So do we test on this? What do we do?
Do we, let's take a 5-minute caucus,
Okay.
all right? Please.
We're good, but go ahead.
You guys had a caucus? You ready for a caucus report?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we had a lot of discussion about various things, and I have some questions that came out of caucus. I'll just rapid fire them at you, and then we can address them at the end.
Oh,
Or do you want to do it one at a time?
committee members could answer?
Don't throw shade at my committee members.
It wasn't shade.
But they also, more than just that, if it's not asked here, people, you know what I mean, people, other places may have questions.
So we started this conversation around people that take supplements and then the duty for the supplement doesn't get performed and repayment. So we're curious around, we had conversation around supplement events that get canceled at no fault to the employee. And one thing that came up was a math competition that was supposed to be held this Saturday that just got canceled by the district. And we just wanted to make sure that if this is approved and that goes into effect, those folks would be held harmless from that, correct? I mean, because it wasn't canceled yet.
Just got rescheduled, we just got the email this afternoon.
Oh, that's true. Okay. We wanted to make sure that the athletic supplement document, just because we went through it so quickly, gets maybe PDF and added to the minutes. And we weren't able to look at the minutes as we were doing as you were doing the presentation, so just wanted to make sure that the total budget for all supplements is enshrined in the minutes as well. And there's a question about job descriptions. The one that we mentioned was department chair, grade level chair. When is that new job description going into effect? I couldn't find it on board docs, but then I was reminded that only administrator job descriptions go to the board now. So when would that job description go into effect?
I'm gonna turn to Kirsten. I think Donna is working on that one. So it would,
She's not.
she's not here, so soon.
By soon, you probably mean effective with the next school year. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, we only have, what, I think
Yeah.
Anna said one more Monday,
Mhm.
except for the, like, one without kids.
So and just so everybody understands, the job description process we have in the contract, which is any change or amendment to the job description goes to labor management. We get feedback from TALC and then we go ahead and implement after that.
And by feedback, you mean non-binding feedback, correct?
I believe that's what's in the contract.
Yeah, well, yeah. I also think that's not in the contract. I think that's kind of the rules, but non-binding feedback. And I think somebody else had a question around, is the same expectation going to be there, and not to give you an idea to add something to the job description, but is the same kind of level of responsibility going to be there for employees who are out on maternity/paternity leave, that the department chair, department head would be responsible in assisting? Because like we all say, if you're out on leave, you're not working, and if you're working, you're not on leave, so.
My
Yeah.
assumption is that the guest teacher, if there's a guest teacher, that grade level chair, department chair is assisting with copies, lesson plans, and grades. Yes. Whether with maternity or not. Yep. What would we like to do? Do we want to test it again?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll test the recommendation from the supplement committee. Oh, sorry, Carl.
And I apologize for having car trouble and getting here late, so I'm trying to play catch up. I do have a question regarding, and I don't know what we're getting ready to, are we getting ready to test to accept all the recommendations of the supplement committee? Okay, so I would, okay, well, I have concerns. When I look at some of the, and I hate I missed the conversation, but just on the surface, when I think about testing coordinator, when I see something that says 0 to 99, $1,200, if you have 0 to 9, is that 0 to 99 students in the
Yes.
school?
We've got like 5 schools with that fits.
Okay, and when I look at that and I think about some of the testing is not equal. And so I can tell you that at the high schools with a lot of low socioeconomic kids, the number of retakes, the volume of it is nowhere close to, I just think about what my testing coordinator has to do and how long, even though it's a full-time position. So when I look at a $1,200 supplement for 0 to 99 students, there's no way it's,
Right now, they're already getting that.
okay.
Yeah.
So, so is that, so we're looking at raising, let me hear.
Yeah,
Share with me the story, 'cause I'm struggling.
So prior to these recommendations, I think it was 0 to 500, got 12.15. So that was already happening. So what we did is, under the idea of we should never probably take money away from people, we made the lowest tier 12.15 and worked from there. And honestly, before you were here, we had that whole discussion around testing load as opposed to number of butts in seats. Bless you. But the real problem was we didn't necessarily have the hard data. I mean, I could make assumptions, right? That, and even among the high schools, right? You may have more retests than one of your peers at another high school. So we just didn't have the data to make a decision, and there's a commitment to come back next year, once we've gotten that data and kind of take another bite at the apple to really respect the idea of kind of workload. And I always talk about special instructional, especially psychologists, like they staff them too based on number of bodies in the building, not necessarily number of students who would need psychological services. And so I think I think there's a pivot coming even among athletic trainers. There's an athletic trainer who gave us a report that talked about how, gymnastics is the most injury-prone sport there is at the college level, even, ahead of football. And so the idea of, well, what sports do you have? How many athletes do you have? Like, what's the propensity of injuries? And how do we equate that to a trainer versus just saying, we've got 75 students, you need a trainer. And so that's where we're moving. The problem is we're data insufficient at the moment. And so this next year is going to be that. So have you or your testing coordinator get ready, because we'll be asking, like, how many first tests, how many retakes, how many students do you have? And again, we'll have a year's worth of data, which is better than no year's worth of data. But as we get 5 or 6 years down the road, it'll be great data. But I think there's a desire to come back and have another bite at the apple of just that portion of the kind of student assigned idea as opposed to the actual workload. Because I have a testing coordinator on my bargaining team, and she's sitting next to you, and she lets me know that, there's a lot of testing that happens.
Should stay on that. Well, then the other piece that I missed, and I'm sorry, like I said, when we were, with the whole athletic, state piece, where, can someone give me a fill in on that? Because I'm really concerned about how this is going to.
I'm not an attorney, and I didn't say a Holiday Inn Express last night, and there is an attorney here, and he will more than happily correct me. So my understanding is, if the board develops a policy, there is an opportunity for booster clubs to pay, I think, at least football coaches. No, all, but if it's a football booster, they can pay the baseball coach?
It's up to them, right?
Okay, right, so booster clubs can pay your coaches independently, salary dollars, and then there's also, and this is where I'm definitely gonna need correction, there's an opportunity for people who get supplements, I believe, to have their supplemented position taken out of the unit and negotiate directly with the superintendent or their designee for more salary dollars. I know this really was from the coaching side of things, but the way the law was written, it's any kind of extracurricular activity. So the yearbook person could ask to have the yearbook position take out and negotiate it individually with the superintendent, and the superintendent could decide the Dunbar yearbook is fabulous. That person gets $10,000, and this other yearbook is horrible. They don't get anything. And in Orange, when the coaches went to the superintendent said, you're not getting me on this one, she said. So, yeah, then of course there's gonna be NIL money for the athletes, which is another whole thing, because there may be times when the athletes make more money than the coaches, but I'm 13 months and 19 days, so I probably won't have to solve that problem.
Okay, well, it's gonna be a cluster.
Our board is.
that whole thing. I mean, and it's not just a district issue, it's a state of Florida issue.
Yeah, and Mr. Doty just said our board is not inclined to engage in those separate discussions.
We're not gonna be the first one.
We shouldn't be, because it's gonna be a cluster.
I'm just gonna mention this because it was already mentioned. But when I look at the current grade level chair job requirements, it does say in here, support guest teachers with lesson plans, copies, and grading. I think somewhere at some point, we need to have a real conversation on who truly is responsible for lesson plans when people are out on maternity or paternity leave. Because now that our employees have the 4 weeks off, that is a huge thing to put on the back of a grade level chair for the amount of money. Especially if you have multiple people on a team having babies, which sometimes happens at a school, if you know what I mean. It's like, don't drink the water fountain in that hallway. But that is not, it's kind of always been a topic. Everyone has a different answer. Some people say the employer is responsible for leaving plans. Other people say you're not responsible for anything. But that is, as a person who just did 4 weeks of paternity lesson plans for my partner teacher, that is a huge task, and I wasn't even the grade level chair. So I think that that's somewhere along the line, a conversation about what does that really logistically look like is important.
Just a comment, again, just appreciation to the supplement committee. As you can tell by this conversation, that's not easy work to be engaged in, and having a limited budget, point taken by Kevin, that we need to consider what we do in the future here with some of the supplements. But I feel like there's a commitment and moving forward, again, when the supplement committee meets, that we might want to do, just some surveying to ask some folks, for some feedback and input before we get to this point. I mean, I understand in the past, some of the supplement committees have kind of operated and made some small adjustments. This was a pretty much larger undertaking this time, so next time around, we probably want to get, those are public meetings, so anybody's allowed to come and provide some input and feedback at that point.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the supplement committee recommendation, or do we want to try the test again? Test, okay. And Brian make it? Okay, another consensus. Okay, I believe now we have another presentation from TALC or Sarah? Sarah. Sarah, go
I
ahead.
think we agreed to have the district present the budget information, and I think then TALC will have their own budget.
Well, not our budget, but your budget.
Okay,
Gonna
excellent.
present
All right,
on
I'm gonna have Sarah go ahead. Do you want me, we've got it here, sorry. Is it this one?
Yes. All right, well, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. We're gonna go into a lot of information about the budget, and we're gonna throw some pretty big numbers out there. And if you have any questions, please ask, because there is a lot of context behind the numbers, and we wanna make sure that you have that information. So I'll start with talking about our total budget. The budget has 6 parts to it, and you can see that breakout of the pie here. We have the general fund, that's our main operating fund, that makes up $1.29 billion, or 39% of our total budget. And this is just the main funding source that we operate daily with, that funds our salaries, utilities, instructional materials, and all the things of that nature that it takes to run the district every day. We have debt service, and this is pretty much like our mortgage payment on the new schools that we've built in the past, and that makes up 3%, or a total of $99 million of the total budget. We have capital, that's making up the largest portion of our budget currently at 46%, or $1.55 billion. And a lot of that money is in the fund balance for capital, because we intentionally withhold money in reserve to make our debt service payments. So essentially the debt service fund exists because it is a transfer from capital. So our mortgage payments are essentially made with capital funding. That's why that balance there is so large. And then we have our food service fund. Of course, that's providing meals to our kids every single day at 68.62 million, or 2% of the total budget. We have our special revenue grants that would include things like Title I, Title II, 3, 4, IDEA, and that makes up 3% of our budget. And lastly, we have our internal service fund. This is essentially our self-insured medical program. So when we talk about health insurance, a majority of the money from this fund, internal service, comes from the general fund. So when we talk about, the 10,000 plus board contribution to employee health insurance, it's essentially a transfer from the general fund into the internal service fund to cover the claims of our medical expenses. We do have some other non-employee insurance programs in this fund, such as workers' comp or property casualty, but that's what the internal service fund is, and it makes up 7% of the budget at $225.6 million. And so for the remaining part of the presentation, I'm only gonna focus on the dark blue portion of this pie, our general fund. When we talk about the general fund, we're talking about 6 sub-funds within it. We have, and I've given you kind of the accounting string that we use to track all this. We have Fund 10,000, which is our daily operating fund, the things that I hinted to earlier, such as salaries, utilities, instructional materials, comes from that fund at $1.2 billion. And that is also made up of a fund balance of $185.7 million. We have Fund 11,000, that's our state and local grants. So usually like general things that are appropriated through the General Appropriations Act, and we receive grant awards from the Florida Department of Education, is made up there at 10.3 million. We have our Fund 11,100, that's the VPK program, specifically anything and everything VPK gets recorded there. And then the last 3 funds that we have are all hurricane funds that we have open. You can see we still have Hurricane Irma from 2017. We're hoping to have that closed out with FEMA by June 30th of 2026. Hurricane Ian makes up a large portion at $40 million, and then we have a small balance in our Hurricane Milton fund. So when we talk about the general fund, or you see information presented in our budget books or in the annual financial report that's due to DOE every year, when we say general fund, it's encompassing all of these funds, and with our daily operating being the largest, but we are talking about all of these funds. So to continue with that entire part 1, you guys have seen this graph, or anybody who's been on TALC in the past has seen this graph, and this is essentially our ending fund balance history for the total general fund. And over a span of time, if you look at 21 through 25 here, we have the unassigned portion of the fund balance, and that is essentially our most flexible pot of money. Not a whole lot of strings attached to it. We have the assigned portion of the fund balance, and this is essentially purchase orders that were created in one year and rolled to the subsequent year in anticipation of those goods and services being paid for. So that 9.2 million in fiscal year 25 was all encumbered by purchase orders that we rolled to fiscal year 26 in anticipation of paying for those goods and services. We have the restricted fund balance at 80.2 million at the end of fiscal year 25. This is where that $40 million for Hurricane Ian is covered at. You can kind of see if you look back at the restricted fund balance in 21, 22, 23. Hurricane Ian happened in fiscal year 23, so you can see in 24 it took that $40 million jump, and that's because we received an influx of state funding, and so it just enhanced that restricted fund balance, and that's the primary reason why we've seen such an increase to the restricted fund balance. But anything in restricted fund balance is exactly that. It has strings tied to it. We can only use it for a certain purpose. Like some state categoricals that would be wrapped up there would be like educational enrichment, formerly known as SAI or supplemental academic instruction. So there are some state restricted categoricals there as well. And then we have the non-spendable portion of the fund balance, and that's essentially inventory that we have purchased but not have dispersed. And a perfect example of that is our district warehouse. We purchase supplies. They get delivered to the warehouse, but then schools order them, like for custodial supplies, things of that nature. And so until we actually disperse it to the school and record it as an expense, all of those supplies are sitting in inventory. or in this non-spendable fund balance. So you can see in this snapshot, we typically had seen increases in the total fund balance, 21, 2, 3, 4. We saw increases every single year. Last year, fiscal year 25 was the first year we saw a decrease in the fund balance of $13.3 million. And then one assessment that we take is called the financial condition ratio. This is a measurement that all districts use to essentially measure their health. And what that is the unassigned plus the assigned fund balance. So those top two rows divided by our total revenue. That is what calculates that percent. And so while this is a statewide measure used, I would never, my personal preference is we would never focus on this financial condition ratio strictly because that assigned fund balance is accounted for in there. And that is money that is already tied up in purchase orders anticipated to be paid. So a more accurate measure of the district's health is that unassigned fund balance. And you can see there it took a $12 million decrease from 24 to 25. So that total $13 million deficit, that was primarily in the unassigned fund balance. And here's the breakup of that unassigned fund balance. As I mentioned kind of on one of the first slides, the general fund makes up 6 different sub-funds. And here's that breakout. So of our daily operating fund, $185.6 million was the fund balance for that. And then you can see the breakout for the remaining funds with Hurricane Ian coming in at the second largest of $40 million. And what I'll highlight here for you too is in our Fund 10,000, the daily operating, the 4 categories of assigned fund balance are all made up within that general fund as well. All of the other ones below, the state and local grants, VPK, and the hurricane funds, those are all restricted fund balances. So you would only see those items reflected in the restricted fund balance, and then the daily operating fund would have the breakdown of those 4 fund balance categories that I just described. So in total, we had our fiscal year 25 ending at $229.6 million. So now I'm gonna separate out just Fund 10,000. That's our daily operating fund, because when we talk about, budget, the reductions that have been going on, salary increases, right? A majority of it is all coming from Fund 10,000, our daily operating fund. So we want to isolate that from all the other funds that are encompassed in that total general fund. So I've given you kind of the same snapshot period, fiscal year 21 through fiscal year 25 here. And we start with the beginning fund balance. And to that, I'll take fiscal year 25, for example. So we start with our beginning fund balance of $203 million. We add to that our total revenues. We would subtract out total expenditures, and that would give us our ending fund balance. So that's how that formula works. And you can see just in Fund 10,000, we had a $17.4 million decrease in the fund balance to Fund 10,000. And so you may wonder, well, you just said $13 million reduction. How is this now $17 million? And that's because when we isolate this fund, it paints a different picture. So between this reduction of $17 million, there was an increase to the Hurricane Ian fund balance of $4 million. That gets us to the net $13 million for the total general fund. And this is really why I want to shift our picture. When we have conversations, I don't want to talk about the general fund in total, given how much funds, sub-funds are making that up. I want us to look at our daily operating. And so what I've broken out for you in the bottom as well is the capital transfer. This is an important strategy in our financial planning. And so you can see we have the capital transfer total. That's the total money we have moved from capital into the general fund. I gave you the total because when you look in our annual financial reports or the budget book, this is the number you're going to see. And this number would encompass transfer for daily operating, so a transfer from capital to cover daily operations for the district. But it also covers charter school PICO funding. So the capital PICO funding that charter schools receive, we transfer that to the general fund and disperse it to them from the general fund. So you can see at the bottom For a couple of years, at the very last row, the transfer from capital out of our 37X fund, that's the property tax millage that we levy for capital. You can see for a couple of years, it was consistent at 16 million. In 24, we transferred 0. And then in 25, we transferred 23.4 million. And this year, we're looking at transferring close to 36 million to cover daily operations. And so I point that out because, as I said, this is important in our financial planning and one that we want to get consistent on. It shouldn't be, kind of with the wind every single year. We want to make sure that we have the stability in our capital fund as far as what we're transferring over, and that creates some stability in the general fund as well to know how much we're transferring over every year and can rely on. Kevin, did you have a question?
I did, and I'm glad, I was waiting on you to get to a break. So I don't know a whole bunch, but I know there are certain things you can pay for that may look like non-capital expenses out of capital dollars. So my question is, are we currently maximizing, because maybe custodians or something could be paid for, or who? Bus drivers or somebody can be paid for. Are we currently maximizing that number, or are we moving towards maximization of that number?
Well, I would say maximization depends, right? It's not, these are all the things that we could transfer or charge directly to capital, and that's what we will want to do because we have so many capital needs that, every dollar that we transfer is a dollar that's not spent on roofs, a dollar that's not spent on flooring, that's not spent on HVAC systems. So there isn't a max amount, but we would never want to get near that max amount because of the capital needs that we have.
Those would be PICO dollars. Traditionally, those would have been PICO dollars, some of those things, and we no longer get those. They go, this is a good question. I'm setting you up.
I know you are. I know.
Get ready. Here
catching
comes
it.
the softball. I feel like Dave Elias. Anyway, so the PICO money traditionally sometimes pays for the public education capital outlay. And that would pay for, before they decided to give all of it to charter schools, that would pay for some of the capital expenses that we're now having to pay for out of other dollars. So I guess the question is, and this is something for the larger group, are we interested in jointly advocating for PICO dollars coming back to us and not necessarily exclusively going to charter schools, like to each what they've earned, right? I mean, and you don't have to answer that question, but I know the PICO thing is a real sticking point with me because we used to have it and now we have none of it and the charter schools get all of it and they service far fewer students. And if we just got back the percentage we were owed, this conversation may look different, but I think that's something we need to discuss about jointly advocating for in other places than this room.
Understood. So here's our fiscal year 26 outlook. We've talked about kind of 21 through 25 in that historical context. And one thing, Jay, if you'll go back one slide, one thing I should add here, because there's a lot of context and a lot of things that happened in this time frame. So we had, in 21, that was kind of when COVID was really ramping up. Our district saw an influx of ESSER funding. That was all the federal grant dollars that came through the district. I mean, it was close to $300 million for our school district. And so essentially what happened was there were expenditures that were occurring in the general fund that were shifted over to those ESSER dollars. And then when ESSER went away in fiscal year 24, some of those expenses shifted back. Another thing that happened during this time frame was we've just seen a surge in property values. We had kind of that post-COVID property value surge where the market just shot up. Even though we had Hurricane Ian in fiscal year 23, I think it was fiscal year 24, we saw a 27% increase in our property tax revenue, which is extremely high. And now we're kind of seeing that stabilize. And so one thing, if you have done the math, and I know you probably didn't right now, but what I'll share with you, an interesting thing, if you were to look at our revenue increase from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 21, our revenues have increased 28% or $225 million. And then our expenditures have increased 40%. So our expenditures are far outpacing our revenue increases. And this slide tells that story. So when we look at fiscal year 26, we have, again, that just fund 10,000, our daily operating fund, beginning fund balance of $185.6 million. We're anticipating revenues of just over 1 billion. And our expenditures are slightly above that, as we've kind of seen over that snapshot that I just talked you through. So expenditures of 1.1 billion, and then our ending fund balance at 138.9 million, giving us a deficit of $46.7 million. So that's kind of the state that we're living in right now. And I've broken out that capital transfer for you, the total capital transfer being $45.4 million. And again, about 9.5 of that is for charter school PICO funding. And then the remaining transfer for daily operating, to cover daily operating expenditures, is about 36 million. So our revenue snapshot here, we don't have the FEFP fourth calculation. The FEFP fourth calculation would be based on the February FTE survey, and we haven't gotten that from DOE yet, but we are anticipating a decline in that as well. So this is kind of a living, breathing document. You know, I always tell people that the budget is just a snapshot in time, and the numbers are constantly moving. You know, if you can imagine forecasting payroll for 12,000 employees, anticipating what every school and department is going to spend, it's a pretty large calculation. And while it's kind of cumbersome, that's not the only data we rely on to make these assumptions. We do have kind of some trend data based on prior expenditures and revenues that we look at to even pinpoint how accurate these are. And so all indicators continue to project this close to $47 million deficit. And there's a lot of factors at play that are driving this. I mean, one is just our expenditures outpacing our revenues over the last couple of years. But we also experienced declining enrollment this year for the first time. The expansion of school choice has definitely played a role in that. Although that's not the only reason for our declining enrollment. I talked a little bit about property values, and I had a little slide on that. Interest rates have been a big factor, and I'll kind of show you what we've been generating in income for the higher interest rates that we've experienced over the last few years, and then of course inflation. I mean, we all deal with this in our personal budgets, and we definitely deal with it at the district level as well. So here is our unweighted FTE snapshot, and I just want to share, like, we use the term unweighted FTE or FTE and enrollment interchangeably, but they're not necessarily the same thing. So, you know, you probably see a lot of different things out there about this enrollment number, this FTE number, but just know that might be where some of the confusion come from, because they are completely different things. And so for budget purposes, we're always talking in terms of FTE, because that's the measurement value of how our dollars are generated from the state through the Florida Education Finance Program. And so you can see on the orange line here, we have our projected FTE, and then the blue line is our actual FTE. And for fiscal year 26, this was as of the FEFP third calculation. Again, we're waiting on the FEFP fourth calculation. That should come out hopefully this month, but what you can see again here is just that first year in quite a long time that we've had that decline in unweighted FTE. So our trends have always been annual growth, with this year being the first year of a decline. And based on the preliminary survey 3 numbers that we got, even at survey 3, our FTE decreased a little bit further to 85,340. So whereas the FEFP third calculation, which was based on the October FTE survey, was at 86,108, the preliminary survey 3 is showing 85,340. So again, just another decline. And for fiscal year 27, we projected higher than where we are at. And that's really because we have this 1 year decline. We're not going to change our trend models or what we accept from the state as far as an FTE projection to go down, because essentially if we were to ask the state for maybe the FTE that we're at now, 86,000, we'd only get funded for that. Right, so we want to maximize our allocation through the FEFP and try to get as much as we can, or much as we would anticipate. So we always will go with the higher number when it comes to the state FTE projections. And the state does give us models to adopt. They make recommendations on the models that we accept. We don't necessarily change them, because they are making all the models based on trend data. And so we accepted a model of theirs at the 86,971 FTE for next year, knowing very well that we may not meet that. And so when we look at our total FTE, because again, this is something that the numbers, a lot of numbers are thrown out there, and so sometimes we're talking about total district FTE, which would include not only district schools, but charter schools and the FES Family Empowerment Scholarship FTE as well. And so I wanted to break that down for you on this slide over the last couple of years. You can see at the very top is our total FTE, so again, inclusive of all of those things, the district schools, charter schools, and the Family Empowerment Scholarship FTE. We have in the blue line, of course, the district traditional school FTE, and the orange line being charter schools, and that gray line being Family Empowerment Scholarship. And you can see with the when House Bill 1 went into effect in fiscal year 24, we were at 4,868 FTE in that program, and for currently in fiscal year 26, over 10,000. So you can see how Universal Choice has expanded that program. And then for our interest income, another factor that's been at play in our budget, you can see right before COVID and before interest rates shot up in fiscal year 22, we were generating income in our daily operating fund of about $1.7 million. And it has spiked through the years just as we had more cash to invest, interest rates spiking, all the way up until fiscal year 25, we saw $31.5 million in interest income. So we have a pretty robust investment portfolio. We try to maximize every dollar we can and invest it, even if it's in short-term liquidities. So again, we just went from 1.7, kind of at the low point, fiscal year 22 on this graph, to over $31 million. And so when you have that $20 million increase, it's very natural to be accounting for that money, this non-reoccurring money, and investing it into recurring things such as salaries. So for fiscal year 26, the current year, we do project about a $4 million decrease in interest income down to $27.2 million. And then we continue to expect that to decline. Kind of interest rates are flattened right now. We anticipate they'll continue to decrease. And then of course, as our fund balance goes down, we'll have less funds to invest as well. So we'll continue to anticipate our interest income going down. And for our fiscal year 27 FEFP outlook, so the legislator is going to convene tomorrow through May 29th to hopefully get us a resolution on the budget. And kind of here's what we're looking at. On the House version of the FEFP that we received back in January or February, it was about a 3% increase over this year's FEFP. So this is in comparison to the FEFP third calculation based on the October. So again, we haven't received that fourth calculation. So this comparison is to the third calc. So in that comparison, we're looking at, under the House version, a $28 million increase, which excludes charter schools and FES. And of that $28 million, 19.1 is the increase due to our projected FTE. So when, a couple slides ago, when we talked about where our FTE currently is, to what we were projecting at a higher amount for fiscal year 27, that gap is that $19 million. So essentially not money we want to necessarily spend, because if we don't get those kids, we'll have to send it back to the state. So we don't want to be expending that money knowing there's that risk there. And then for the Senate version, more moderate increase of about 1.5%, so 14.3 million total when we back out charters and FES. And I actually think the Senate version of the FEFP separated out FES, so it was no longer lumped into the school district budgets. And then of that $14.3 million increase, 12.2 million of that is the FTE projected increase. And so we had very different runs of the FEFP from the House and Senate, especially in just base student allocation. The Senate was increasing the base student allocation by $50. The House version was increasing by $129. And of course, there's a lot of other factors that go into that base student funding, because we have things like comparable wage factor that change that number, the program cost factors, so those cost factors that are based on the need of a student, right? Those change, and so essentially that $50 or $129 comes out less than that, essentially, once you take those other factors into consideration. So This is where we're at with the state budget right now. We just wait on a conference report or the first calculation, which will help us determine our budget for next year. And here is a graph on the investment in salaries the district has made over the years, and you can see the FEFP increase, and I have backed out charter schools and family empowerment scholarships from that percent increase because it definitely skews the picture. And so I'll let you digest that, but what you can see is in 25-26, the current year, as of the FEFP third calculation, the year-over-year increase is 2.26%. Or $19 million. And then the average compensation increase that we gave out was 7% and essentially over $50 million in compensation that we provided this year. And applicable to you all here, we have the annual cost of salary and benefits for instructional staff is a total of almost $467 million. This is just contracted salaries and benefits, the benefits specifically being FRS and Social Security. So this would not include things such as, additional service, supplemental contracts like class coverage. It does not include salary supplements, any of those that we just went through that are on the supplement committee list. And so essentially a 1% increase with benefits would be almost $4.7 million.
That's a good question.
Yes.
Oh, great timing.
Yeah.
The annual cost, was that the actual cost last year, or is that what has been budgeted historically?
That was the cost for this year.
This current.
Yes. Kevin?
And all of these numbers are outside of the TISA dollars, correct? TISA dollars would be added on top of this?
No, these are inclusive of TISA.
But
So
how-
these are dollars.
In the past, were inclusive of TISA, right? But like you can't tell me what TISA is gonna be a month from now, right?
No, I mean, we know based on the Senate and House runs, they were both very close to $3.7 million
For us.
for TISA for next year.
Okay.
Anna has a question.
I'll get you the microphone.
Thank you for that presentation. My question is on the FY27 FEFP outlook slide right there. So on that slide, it says that the House, that money includes charter schools and the Family Empowerment Scholarship, where the Senate does not. So my question is, what is the difference with that? And then does that mean if like the Senate proposal went through, we would then have to carve money out for the charter schools and the family empowerment from that pot of money for them?
No, so both of these numbers are exclusive of charters and family empowerment scholarships. So we've already backed that out of these increases, and then so they would get their own fund set aside through the FEFP.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't want to stop you in the middle because you were like, had this momentum going. But on slide 4, under assign, I see the jump from 2.7 million to 9.2 million. Could you explain that?
Sure, that's a really great question. So the reason for that significant increase was we had a bunch of textbook orders, purchase orders that rolled from fiscal year 25 into 26. So the textbook orders didn't necessarily get paid out before we closed the year, so those purchase orders rolled to fiscal year 26. So that's a majority of that increase. Yeah, so it was the purchase orders to buy the textbooks. They did not get paid before fiscal year 25 closed, and they rolled into fiscal year 26, and that's what that assigned fund balance number is.
Other questions? Kurt?
So I just, back to that the penultimate slide there, with the cost of salaries at 466 million. you say that includes benefits, so when I look at the district summary budget, that's the 5,000 line item, that's not just the 100 object code, that's 100 and 200 added together, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And when you're looking at the district summary budget, it's inclusive of all those funds, right? VPK, state and local grants. And I did not put in here the cost of medical insurance. The benefits are just FRS and Social Security. So, but on the district summary budget, it would be all inclusive of FRS, Social Security, and the medical insurance.
Additional questions?
Well, I'm looking very much forward to your budget presentation.
Are you ready for yours? Okay. Go ahead, Ron.
So I know that, you know, in recent times, we've talked about enrollment. Can you just explain for the public the projection of enrollment as opposed to why we have declining enrollment? I think that was in one slide.
Yeah, and so as I mentioned, you know, enrollment and FTE are two different things, and let me get a little more into the weeds with you guys. So we do start with enrollment projections, which is a head count. So we start with enrollment, the head count of students that are anticipated, and then we convert it into FTE. Because FTE is based on grade level, the needs of that student, the instructional minutes that they're receiving. So we start with the head count that we anticipate, and then we convert it into FTE for budgeting purposes. So the reason why, I think it was it this slide, Ron, or I think you want to go back? Like maybe this one? Yeah, so the question of, so the question is, you know, if we're at 86,108 students currently, why would we project 86,971? And so again, the reasoning behind that is, you know, a 1 year decrease in FTE, we're not gonna let take over our trends of not projecting growth, right? We've seen growth year after year for the last several years, and so this 1 year, we're not gonna just completely change up our modeling. But the second reason behind that is because if we project more, the state allocates more. And while we may not reach that projection, we'd rather maximize our funding by going with the maximum FTE projection. So if we do get those kids, that funding is pretty much guaranteed, because if any of you guys have been in school finance for a long time, you know, when a lot of districts were in these rapid growth states, what would happen is, you know, everybody's projecting growth, that growth was completely exceeded at the state level, and then we got a proration. So the state didn't allocate enough for everybody to fund their FTE, and because it went over, everybody had a decrease essentially. Like, it just got a proration. I don't know if I explained that the best, but so that's kind of just the environment we had been operating in. And so we continue to make those higher projections, because if we're gonna get those students, we wanna ensure we have the funding for them. If not, then we just have to be proactive in our financial planning and having those funds in reserve, knowing they very well may get retracted by the state at a later time.
Okay. Kurt, did you share that with us?
No, not yet.
Okay. Are you gonna pop it in there?
Yeah, I can just share from here if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I can bring it up tomorrow.
And then link it in?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Windows K, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Oh, I gotta get one let go. All right, so this is not gonna be as in the weeds as your presentation, and I wanna say thank you for just the great level of detail. I feel like that was probably the best financial presentation that we've ever received at Collective Bargaining. And I want to make sure that we use the same words, and a lot of what we have here will center around our conversation that we had don't even know, maybe right around spring break, around budgeting practices. And the focus is really around budgeting patterns, reserve balances, and instructional spending, and then we'll finish kind of with our budgeting priorities, TALC's bargaining priorities. You mentioned the fund balance. We talk a lot about kind of the statutory minimum required for the fund balance, which is 3%. The district has to maintain a minimum of 3% total revenues in the fund balance because we don't want the state to come in and take control. And the numbers that I'm going to show here come from the district summary budget that is presented at the beginning of the year and compared to the AFR, the annual financial report, which is what was actually spent at the end of the year. And kind of our goal here is to align bargaining authority with demonstrated financial capacity. When I have the fund balance here, it's just the sum of the assigned and unassigned. I know you showed like restricted and some of those others. I'm avoiding those for this presentation today. And kind of one of the takeaways that we saw here is that the district's reserves substantially exceed the statutory requirement. If you look at the last few years, you had very similar years in your presentation, which I really appreciated. You can see the difference between the summary budget, what you say you're going to have at the end of the year in the fund balance versus what is actually reported there. And kind of my takeaway here is that the board repeatedly underestimates what the ending fund balance would be. For example, in the 24-25 school year, the summary budget projected a ending balance of $38.5 million, and it ended with $146 million, which is over $100 million difference. And we don't have it obviously for the 25-26 school year because that's the one that we're in now. And the average difference over these 5 years is $98 million, which is a lot of money that could be used for salaries on top of other things. I'm going to get these colors wrong because I'm colorblind. I wrote them down just so I wouldn't get them wrong, but the blue line there, because I'm more of I like the graph version, is the district summary budget. That's what I kind of think of it like a home budget. My budget at the beginning of the year, it should show where I'm projected to be, and at the end of the year, I should be kind of in that ballpark. But what we see is kind of continual over or under budgeting in this regard. The orange line is the ending balance there, and the gray line is the statutory, the statutory 3% minimum. And if you expand that over the last 10 or so years, you can see that it's not a 1-year anomaly. It's a long-term trend of under budgeting what that fund balance will be. And these long-term trends really matter when evaluating how much the district can afford when it comes to our bargaining authority. We look at a couple of things inside the fund balance. One are the instructional salaries. That's why I asked the question. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't speaking out of turn there. We look at the 5,100 line item for salaries. Another one that we brought up before with the materials and supplies, because Kevin for years has wanted to float an option around the district giving more money to teachers to help fund things in their classroom. Not just the folks that get lead money, but I think you call it a re-up, right? He would like to see a re-up in January for folks to get more lead money paid for by the district to help fund those items in the classroom. So the line item there for salaries is more of the day-to-day learning and teaching operations, and then the materials and supplies are exactly what they say there. When we look at the instructional salaries, I'm not including benefits, just salaries here. You can see a difference in what is budgeted by the school board versus what is actually spent. There at the bottom with the 3 stars, I just calculated the difference between what was budgeted for just salaries, again, not benefits, for this school year, this fiscal year, versus what was actually spent the prior year. And and even in that case, we see a $37 million over budgeting. And over these, what is this, 5-6 years, it's an average of 38.8 million. And when we look at kind of the sum of the salary and the benefits portions of the district's budget, that came to about $531 million. Again, I think your number you said didn't include medical insurance, so I understand that. But that's still a $65 million difference between salaries and benefits of what was budgeted versus what was spent. I know medical insurance wasn't 65 million, so I'm just arguing that there's some money to play with in that case. Again, I like the graphs. And so we can see kind of the difference in what is budgeted every year versus what is spent. And from our perspective, the trend is quite consistent. If you look at it over the past maybe 10 years or so, the blue line is what the district budgets they will spend in salaries versus what is actually spent at the end of the year. And just from our perspective here, annual salary expenditures remain below the projections. In some years, like I said, the gap can be $50 million, which is a lot of salary dollars that we want to put in the pockets of employees and our members. And the same with materials and supplies. We see large gaps between what is budgeted on materials and supplies and what is spent. And I believe, Sarah, you mentioned in our conversation that you wanted to see some of those kind of fleshed out into different like subcategories, because maybe I'm misspeaking, but some of the hurricane stuff got lumped into these line items. I didn't flesh those out explicitly, but if you look at the 23-24 year, that may be one of them. Only 16% of the line item for materials and supplies was actually expended. And we want to see students and teachers benefiting from these resources. And it just creates more opportunities for direct classroom investment. You can kind of see over the years the difference in what is budgeted in the blue line versus what is actually expended in the orange line, and the more long-term trend. I don't know why my colors changed, but over the years. And so this just seems to be a consistent overspending, which at the end of the day, I think of it like my checking account. Anything I don't spend goes into, I get a re-up in January from this. Well, let me say this, our fiscal year is July to June. Whatever we don't spend in June, we get more money from the state in July. So this just kind of goes into the savings account or goes into the reserves. We want to see this go into the classrooms to fund those materials and supplies that are desperately needed. So our interest here, and we said this, I think, at the last meeting, for classroom supply money, we would like to see money used from that materials and supplies line item to give supply money not only to those who are not eligible for money by Florida statute at the beginning of the year, but to give a refill to all instructional staff at the beginning of second semester so they can fund things in their classroom. This was spoken about earlier today. We would like to see any specific money allocated for instructional supplements and not have that difficult choice. Do we spend money from the bargaining authority for salaries, or do we spend those for supplements? This hasn't come up at this bargaining session, but it has at every insurance task force meeting and every rep meeting. But health insurance is out of control with a 10% trend this year. We would like to see the board take some of these reserves and allocate funds to the health insurance fund to help keep the plan solvent and help offset those costs to employees. And finally, we would like to see funds allocated for bargaining authority that accurately reflect the fund balance. We're not asking the board to go to that 3% line. But I can't remember what slide it was. This district's looking at a 14 and 15% financial condition ratio. We're asking you to spin that down and put that money into the pockets of employees. That's what we got. No, I don't have a question, so,
Thank you very
but I'll
much.
take questions.
Questions or comments over here? Karen, Sarah?
I don't really have any questions, Kerr. One, thank you for your presentation, and, you know, in the meeting we had a couple of months ago, and I'll say it here too, you know, can we refine our budgeting practices? For sure. You know, those excess amounts that you see sitting in, the instructional salary accounts and supplies, essentially, those are the fund balance, right? It's just, where are we showing them in the district summary budget? In the district summary budget, they're being shown in those salaries and supplies, but then at the end of the year, when the AFR is put together, it's put back in the fund balance where it belongs. And so what we need to do is have our budget aligning with what we actually anticipate. So what has happened, if you'll go back to the slide where you had the breakdown of, like the 3% minimum state required fund balance, like you had $38 million there. So anybody who looked in our budget book, you would see that's our anticipated ending unassigned fund balance for this year, although we know last year was 229 million, right? And so that doesn't make sense. It's because that difference between those two numbers is essentially spread in the salaries, spread in supplies, primarily, and then it gets trued up at year end. And so we on the budget side want to make sure that's more accurate, because what we want is a 10% unassigned fund balance. That has been just kind of prior desire from the district, and so a 10% fund balance in our daily operating fund, not that total general fund picture that we always show or that gets presented through financial information. We want a 10% unassigned fund balance, because that would equate to about $102 million, which may sound like a lot, but when you think about needing an amount in reserve to cover emergencies such as, you know, maybe something happened, a hurricane, right? But a lot of that comes from capital. But what I'll share with you is, like, one payroll for the district costs about $20 million, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. So when you think about that $100 million only covering 5 pay periods, or essentially 2.5 months, right? It's not a lot of money. And so we want to keep that at least 10% fund balance, unassigned fund balance. That number is going to change every year because it's 10% of new revenue, right? So if we're going to collect $1 billion in revenue into the general fund, we want 10% or 100 million sitting in our unassigned fund balance. And that's what in our district budget documents, we need to reflect that, rather than spreading it between expenditure accounts like salaries and supplies. We need to show it there in the fund balance, so it's not creating any confusion of underspending, because while that may be the case to some extent, because when we talk about instructional salaries, the number of vacancies that we've had, we budgeted for X amount of positions, but we only hired for X, right? That would definitely leave a lot of money sitting in those accounts. But it definitely skews it as far as, you know, what we want to have in our fund balance on the budget side. So I don't really have any questions about your presentation. I mean, all legitimate information and concerns, and it's just something that we've got to work through on our end to make that budget picture more accurate.
So moving into the next fiscal year, is the district looking at budgeting differently, maybe not be the right word, to spin down that fund balance?
Yeah, we are looking at budgeting differently. So in the next budget book that comes out, or the district summary budget that you receive, the ESC 139, we will have our actual, well, not actual, but our truly projected ending fund balance in that budget as well. It won't be, you know, you won't see 38 million and then at the end of the year it's something completely different, right? So no, our goal is to fix that for next year.
I have another question I'm trying to formulate.
Oh, and you had a second part to that question, but what I want to clarify, so for example, the unassigned fund balance at the end of fiscal year 25 was 136 point something million dollars, right? And we're facing a $47 million deficit. A majority of that is going to come from the unassigned fund balance, so we could very, very well go below our 10% goal at the end of this year.
So when you say deficit, like in my household budget, I think if I have a deficit, I need to pull out of my savings account out of reserves. Is that what the district is doing? Because what I took from that presentation is that you're reallocating capital dollars to fill that hole and not necessarily pulling out of your reserves.
It will come from reserve, so without a transfer from capital, we would be facing a $92 million deficit. So that transfer from capital is only offsetting that deficit to bring it down to $47 million. And thank you for that, because that was a good clarifying question.
How do I ask this? We're hearing a lot about school budgets being tied directly to enrollment, and at least from the TALC office, we're hearing a lot about non-renewals. And how is that affecting or how does next year's budget anticipate, these because there's still vacancies and these non-renewals. How are you measuring those? Are you anticipating cutting a number of positions permanently, or do we feel that a lot of these folks are going to have places to land and that you're not going to have as many people actually termed at the end of the year?
Yeah, we don't have the actual final numbers. I mean, obviously today would be the day for non-reappointments or recommendations for reappointments. So as we gather all that data today, we'll have an accurate number of what that looks like. So I can tell you that we have some, we have an idea of what's happening within the buildings. You are right, the budgets that have been given the buildings for next year are based primarily on the FEFPs, the FTEs that we project within those buildings. And so if we use the FEFP to fund that, the number of students that are in there, that's what the allocations are to the district at this point. So if you hear, the terms over allocation, those kinds of things, we've had over allocation funding to the schools over the past few years, which is more than what the FTE brings in for those schools. And so as we kind of take a look at that, where do those additional allocations exist? Why did they exist? What was the actual purpose of those? In reevaluating those to go back and say, okay, this is what schools should get based on their FTE. Now let's build it from there, rather than trying to figure out, who got what based on their small school allocation or what their athletic budget was. Let's start with what each school brings in and then work up from there. So that's where the budgets are. That's the difference between last year and this year, what the schools are. But and then again, as a result of that, there will be, obviously, if you don't have the over allocation budget to do that, that would result in positions being eliminated from each one of those schools. Now, what we haven't taken into account yet is, will we have the same staffing levels next year that we do this year? And based on those cuts, there are vacancies that are starting to occur as we get closer to the date today. We are constantly taking a look at, what does that attrition rate look like and how do we fill that from there? So I don't know if that answered your question. I don't have the actual numbers, but there will be positions eliminated because we're only giving the schools what is based on their FTE.
Questions?
We're good.
Where do we go next? We have an option, test. I feel like we're on a roll tonight, so. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the 15% option is still out there. I want to put that out there. So there's been a lot made in the news media by politicians and school board members about us not bargaining over the summer. Now the law that has passed at least refers to TISA money having to be agreed to by July 31st. So there's some special expedited impasse process that nobody can explain. And I know I've mentioned this earlier, is a bifurcation of TISA, the TISA part of it. And so I think that the first question, and this is a multi-pronged thing. First question is that okay? The second question is more of
Okay.
bifurcating the TISA. The second thing is more of an option, which is, because there are different rules depending on whose budget gets approved, right? One of them says it only goes to 20+ year employees. One of them says it goes to everybody. And so, because we have to follow the law, one of the options is just take the money they give us and divide it up amongst the eligible employees by whatever rules they set up, and then come back out of bargaining authority and make the group that is non-TISA people whole. So the easiest way to say it is in the one budget where it says 20+ years. So we take the TISA money, we divide it by the amount of TISA eligible employees in the 20+ year bracket, everybody gets that amount, and then out of bargaining authority, the first thing we do is make non-TISA eligible people in that group whole with their TISA brothers and sisters. We could do that. The other budget is just everybody in the bargaining unit, but I think the best example is the one that has the restriction on 20+ years. And again, we did ask them to fix it because there was compression, but like many politicians, when you ask them to fix something, they don't know enough to know what they're doing is actually, ooh, good word, messing it up more. I caught myself, messing it up more. So that's certainly something that I think that at least takes the TISA thing off our plate. And I do want to know, because does the board meet in July? It does?
Are you,
Okay.
are you proposing two options there?
Well, the first one is a question, is TISA bifurcation cool? And if yes, then the second one is, that's kind of the first kind of floating option to just deal with the TISA money and then come back and handle the rest of the bargaining authority. Because again, if it's only 20+ in TISA and we make those people whole, we're definitely gonna have to come back and pay attention to the 0 through 19. But the TISA money is the one that's really under the microscope to get done by July 31st. The other one, there's that October weird first deadline out there. But, so yeah, it's a question and a simple option, which I didn't explain very well because you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
So,
Go ahead, Ryan.
let's take a shot at this too, and then the first thing is, let's explain to everybody what TISA is. So that is the teacher salary increase allocation that the budget sets aside for teachers that can only be spent on teacher salaries. And there have been throughout the years certain caveats that go along with that allocation. So I think last year it was anybody 2+ years maybe, or 3+ years, something along those lines. And that was the solution to compression at that point, which we've met all of the TISA requirements over the years. We far outperformed those TISA.
It's the thing that brought us to 47.5 minimum salary.
That's what we used to increase the starting salaries, was in the past the TISA funds. So to answer the question, yes, we understand that there are certain rules around TISA that we probably need to do a memorandum of understanding. We don't know specifically, maybe the budget will be released within this week, something along those lines, and we'll know what the TISA allocation is at that point. Then I believe that we have 30 days that we are now required to have that a bargaining agreement in place once that budget is released. Look at it. Our attorney, he's shaking his head, yes, so that is the case.
So what's the July 31st thing in the legislation? So if they do it January 1st, you've got to come up by January 31st? No, but I'm saying, if in a regular year, when they weren't screwing around with redistricting and all this other nonsense they shouldn't be doing, in a regular year, if they got it done on January 1st, is it the district's interpretation of the law that TISA has to be determined by January 30th?
That was, they've added these new procedures.
Hold on, sorry. Okay, I can hear you, but nobody else.
And that was the deadline, July 31st.
They've now, through Senate Bill 1970, I forget exactly which one it is, they have created this new procedure for money that comes directly from the legislature to pay teachers. And it has a legislative scheme that requires within 15 days for the parties to meet, and within 30 days, settle that. And if that doesn't occur, then there's a expedited impasse procedure. So nobody has done this yet, so we're all, but we can't do anything, and the clock starts, like Ron said, the minute the bill, I guess, is signed into law with the TISA money in. So that's where we're at.
So again, based on what Rob said, if that's the case, and whenever the budget is released and signed by the governor, at that point, that would be what our memorandum would have to state, is that we are in agreement that they're, and I believe that the law also says that there has to be a ratification from the membership. But what the definition of that is, we need to have that conversation too. I think there's probably a lot more discussion into the actual MOU that maybe we need to, executive caucus over or something along those.
Yeah, if they get us the budget on May 29th, there is no ratification. Because they won't allow for electronic ratification and nobody is around, so I'm not sure how we pull that off. But again, give a politician a problem to solve and he'll give you 17 others. I just made that up and I'm trademarking it right now.
I wanna go back to so was your question answered? Is TISA bifurcation okay? And you said, Ron,
I think we definitely have to have that conversation is, how are we going to handle TISA? We do, I actually have been working on and looking at what an MOU looks like. Again, we'll have to get some clarification on what ratification means based on that, to go ahead and implement that by the time. Go ahead.
So when we're on the TSIA that topic here, I have some concerns about the data file that we received with a list of all TISA eligible employees. Because the T in TISA is for teacher, and there were, if I'm reading this right, a lot of support personnel that are included in this file as eligible employees. Right. I don't believe that we've ever paid support staff using TISA before, so I'm requesting we rerun that report and send us.
I thought we did. We did.
that means spell?
Yeah, on this report, there were 1,627 support staff.
So when you go into the law, it specifically says in parentheses, I'll just use 1219.6, and then in the law it says A through D. But if you don't recognize A through D, in E, right next to it is all of what's considered instructional support. It's listed there. But the clarification is it should only be A through D. So I thought we sent you an updated version of that. If not, I'll make sure you have it.
Yeah, if you could resend it, I'm not sure what the date of this one is. I think in the past we used the EEO line numbers to really determine who was eligible and who wasn't. Maybe that's not the case anymore.
So I guess all that, tomorrow we will send you the updated list of eligible TSIA staff.
I was just asking him about whether or not it's worthwhile to ask for years of experience in case the 20-year rule kicks into effect. But Kurt said he can cross-reference his own.
Is our last scheduled session?
It is. Kurt wants me to ask for an updated bargaining unit salary report too, please. So easily that works from his mouth to my ears to the mouth.
Updated, pardon?
Salary spreadsheet, whatever you send us on all the salary stuff. And can we also, as long as we're making data requests, can we get the cost of the bonuses that were paid? The incentive bonuses that were paid this school year?
Sure.
Right, and yeah. Yeah, can we break it down by employee too, Carol wants? Because he's the data guy, so he's the one that's gonna do it.
Okay.
It's true.
I just wondered, he's dictating to you.
He's the one that's gonna have to run the spreadsheet, so he knows, I'm not asking for what he wants, it'll just be another email. It's all right. It's all right. He's writing as well. Yeah, so if we could get that, and then I think we do need to talk about a couple of dates over the summer. I mean, if we get the TISA thing kind of wrapped up and ratified, we've met the legal requirement, but if 2 more meetings allow us to get the whole thing wrapped up, we might want to do that too. I'm just concerned the 20-year rule's gonna kick in, and it's gonna eat up a lot of the bargaining authority for people to make them whole that are non-TISA people, and that's my concern is the 20-year rule, the 20-year thing on the one side of the budget, but yeah, I'm gonna give it to Anna.
I just wanted to kind of retouch on our shared interests that we came up with at the beginning of this session and this bargaining series. And I don't think that any of us, when we sat down and created these shared interests together, could have foreseen that we would be sitting here at this table with the state that we're currently in. And we have teacher retention and recruitment, employee morale, reduction of compression, student achievement, culture, equity, compliance, safety, implementation and manageability, fiscal responsibility, employee and student wellness, and transparency. There's a lot of noise that is happening around everything in education right now. And I know it's not local, just a Lee County thing, but I look at this list and I find it very difficult to meet many of those when it seems like we're not retaining teachers, we're letting teachers go. Employee morale around the district is down everywhere. Listening to both budget presentations with both of them were very thorough and a lot of information to digest and to take in. This is a very difficult job sitting here to meet these interests as we talk about how we move forward for compensation and meet these needs. And I just want us to keep focused on these interests as we move forward through these conversations, because the noise outside of this room is very loud.
Thank you, Anna.
Yes.
So do we have any interest in continuing bargaining before the summer?
Perhaps.
I think we talked with Falk and we said, what was the last day, like, that they could get ratification and.
Oh, so we've passed, the last day for ratification is Friday. Because it takes 5 or 6 days to, actually write it up. We gotta give them some time to look at it. As Anna said earlier in our caucus, there's 1 Monday left. So Friday would be the deadline. And the district hasn't shared bargaining authority. There is no state budget. They don't know what the TISA money is. So there's no, I'm not gonna say there's no reason to meet, but everything now is, we think, TISA is usually, we don't know what the rules are gonna be. So and again, I would just like to ask the district to ask their friends in Tallahassee, who they were more than happy to throw us under the bus last year about the incentive scheme, and more than happy to throw us under the bus at the press conference on Friday, why the damn legislators can't do the one effing job they're sent to Tallahassee to do. And now we've got to wait, and now we're going to wear, as the union, the inability to put money in people's pockets. The deadline is Friday.
Okay.
And we're not going to make it just because of what we have to do.
Okay.
And, obviously appreciate that conversation. I think that, we're more than willing to schedule another, 1 or 2 sessions, because I think we really need to figure out at least when the budget is released, how we meet the requirements of the new law. And then moving forward, I don't anticipate, obviously, we need to digest some of the things tonight. I know, and I appreciate what Anna said around those interests. I think, given the situation that we're in and what we've determined at this point in time, it will be difficult to meet all of those interests, and we understand that. We talked about it at the beginning. A lot of times when it does get to compensation, it becomes a modified interest type of process because we now have a lot more new information to talk about in order to do that. So, again, the discussion with the board is really difficult for us when we don't exactly know what TISA is going to be and what the requirements are around that, and then try to figure out what the budget then can hold based on that. There's interest too, obviously. The district is at, and you said, you understand the district has always wanted to remain competitive with its starting salary. I think from TALC's point of view is we don't want to raise the starting salary too much where it doesn't affect across the board, that those interests were shared. All of the common interests were shared that we had. And so we have to work through that in trying to determine what we have as far as the budget is concerned.
So do you have a bargaining authority number for us currently?
The only thing we have right now is TISA. We have the performance pay, whatever that allocation is. We have to account for the career ladder increase right now and the discussion around what does the starting salary look like based on.
So we don't have what we would call bargaining authority.
Well, right now, it's based on the numbers right now, it's a $5 million bargain.
For TALC.
Yes. But again, we don't know what the final, what we have.
So TALC,
I mean, we're authorized at this point to talk about those kinds of things. And again, that includes TISA, which really is going to, we have to figure that one out.
that's what you gave Spout, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So
I think we should open our calendars and look at June.
just June.
Huh? I mean, June and July, but
We don't want to bargain before then with,
what,
and have stuff in place. I'm just asking.
well, I mean, the TISA thing is essentially just how are we gonna divide it up?
Okay.
So sure, we could meet and do that. But again, at this point, it is only what the numbers are. And if our total bargaining authority is $5 million for the 6,000 members in our bargaining unit, and that includes the TISA money, which I consider to be free money, yeah, let's talk in June and July. So I don't know if people want to get their calendars out.
And Kevin, we can bargain during the day then, correct? Ron? And Kevin?
I always like to stay away from the summer because I want the employees of the school district to enjoy their summer. So we can certainly bargain during the day, but Kerr and I and Elizabeth are the only people here who are under a contract for the summer. So I'm gonna look at the rest of my team to determine when we bargain and where we bargain and at what time we bargain. Because, I mean, I'm gone for 10 days in June and then 14 days in late June going into July with NEA and FEA stuff. So, yeah, so let's start pulling dates.
Well, call out some dates. Last day, June 2nd.
Last day is June 2nd, and then we can do June.
We have
We don't have to state when the Mondays, I mean, that whole week, the first week in June is available.
So the 8th is a day that I'm here. I don't know about anybody else. I'm here.
June 8th is good.
June 8th. Time?
Well, I mean, I don't know if anybody has weighed in the rest of my team.
Is June 1st, what's the last day is?
We're not having people come down here and bargain on the last day.
Right.
That is about as tone deaf as I can think. that they're closing down their classrooms or doing what we need them to do, and we're gonna bring them down here.
We have two
that's-
members that
What's that?
would like to propose June first, 2 members.
You're good with June first? Okay. All right, is everybody?
June
All right.
1st,
Whatever, yeah,
4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Is it as early dismissal day? What's that? Oh. I don't know if that affects anybody on the bargaining team, maybe you? Yeah. Well, we can't run it without you then. June 1st, work for people? 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock. Instead of 4:30, 4 is early dismissal day? Kirk?
Will we have more bargaining authority by then? Because I honestly thought the point of an executive session was to put money on the table. And I mean, if we're gonna meet just to meet, I don't see the point in meeting if there's not bargaining authority to. I hope I don't know why I'm pointing over there. I hope the legislature is done with their budget, but I'm incredibly disappointed that the only dollar amount that was shared here that includes TISA is $5 million. I was expecting much more tonight.
Oh, sorry.
Just a quick question about if we're picking a day that is during the summer, are we still doing like a 4:30, 7:30 thing? Or are we doing like a,
we can do whatever you want.
like a breakfast thing to
We've done
where
that
like,
in the
A sleepover.
I mean,
We've done an all-day thing during the past. in the
I
summer.
just wanna make sure that we talk about that. I'm not thrilled about having, I'm counting down the days. I was like, June 8th, I'm ready to go on a vacation. Now it's like, oh, good thing you didn't buy a plane ticket. Because this work is important. I'm just saying, like, I just wanna make sure that if we're planning a date, let's have an open conversation where we're not just planning a date where it's 3 hours out in the afternoon. I wanna take full advantage and make sure that we're utilizing our time to get work done and not have to keep, picking more days.
Okay, I got Iris next.
And my question is, would a remote meeting be an option for bargaining?
And we've had people join remotely that could make it before.
We have for bargaining?
Yeah, it just, it makes it.
Yeah, that's true. That would be difficult.
The remote option wouldn't be available to the public? It couldn't be made to the public?
We have to hold it in public.
Yeah, I mean, that week, June first may be a bad day because it's the last day of the week. We're going to do something later today. Second, third, fourth. Fifth is no, fourth is no, third is no. Fourth is no, third.
So it would be the following meeting. Yes, go, Rob.
Just a possible facilitation aid. Can we just go around the room and find out when people are not available this summer or in June? Just go around and somebody write that down. Jay records it. I mean,
Sure.
otherwise we're gonna be here all night trying to.
Okay, Randy, tell us what days we have for the district stuff.
Well, that whole first week basically of June.
Yep.
So what I was gonna say though, is could we, like, is there a way that we just put on a calendar, like, these are times that, like, there's not ever gonna be a day of probably we'll all be here.
Correct.
So like, is there a way that we could all just submit like on a calendar or somehow submit a form that then would plug in? That then just says like, I'm not available these 8 days, I'm not available, whatever, but then that way you could map it out and say, this one only has 3 people out of it, because this one has 20.
So I guess where I'd like to start with actually is, are we going to bargain on June 1st? That night of? Is everybody, I know you can't make it, but can everybody else make it June 1st, and do we want to bargain that night? At night, because it's the last day of school, so it's still before. We might go do a little half hour early because it's a half day. So we want to do June 1st. Okay, we'll start with June 1st at 4. Then if we need something else, that first week in June, we're good. Nobody can do that one. June 8th,
4 to 4:30, Amy.
4, let's do 4.
So we'll look at the second week
Yeah.
if we can during the day, obviously, at that time.
I know you want to go on vacation that week.
I just want to like, is it possible, because what are the dates of that discussion? May.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing you
I was
were.
like, if we
If they're done,
If you get it on the 20th,
let's meet.
can we not wait till, you know what I mean? I'd rather get it done sooner
Yeah.
than plan days into the summer.
Right, no, I understand you there. I was thinking the same thing earlier when I asked Kevin about going earlier. Yep. Okay, so June 8th, that week of, and it can be during the day. June 8th is a Monday. Can everybody do June 8th on a Monday if we say 10 to 4?
I cannot, but I can.
Okay.
A deal breaker, I'm at a
Okay. Okay.
What
June
day?
8th, 10 to 4. That's a Monday. Okay? What it would,
So
Brady, what would
it would
it
have to be
take to
noon?
get you to here?
Noon to 4.
Noon to 4? You'll be up north, okay? You'll out of town? Okay. Okay,
What day?
Monday, June 8th, 12 to 4.
We'll bring
Okay.
pizza.
We'll bring pizza, Ron just said. We're waiting for Kevin to get back to the
Do you
restaurant.
have a minute, Ron, for
It's on right now. I got pizza.
Who's Kevin is back from? He has stepped out. We will ask about that. And do we want to leave it at that, or do we want to schedule one more day after that? Okay, so June 1st, 4 to 7. June 8th, 12 to 4. Yeah, we're waiting. Yeah.
Should be okay. I can't see his calendar. Yeah, 4 to. That's fine. You said 12 to 4?
12 to 4, yeah. On the 8th, they would like it before noon. They would go to 8:30 to 12:30, you said? Okay, okay.
Well, if it's at 10 o'clock, you don't have to set alarms. Just saying.
You heard we have set alarms?
Yeah. I can't wait.
Yes.
So you're saying, so I'm, what I'm hearing you say is 10 to 2. That's what I said too. Okay, Kevin.
Yes, I
June
thought I'm needed for one.
Schedule 10 to 4, if something, we'll be fine if you've got to go to, a meeting before that, we'll figure it out.
Okay, 10 to 4
Yep.
on Monday, June 8th. 10 to 4, good? And we got June 1st, 4 to 7. Okay?
Who's buying the pizza? Because we bought it. Okay, because we bought it last time and it was never reciprocated. We
I
went
make
downtown House.
I make
Pizza, we're not
cookies every
getting
week.
nominated. And we can go to the West End and we can go to Centerville Harbor, we can get downtown House of Pizza.
It's not in the fund balance.
Townhouse pizza.
Okay, I'm going to assume we're done for the evening?
Yes, oh,
I'm sorry. Check, let me get you like.
I just want to say something in closing. Hearing that $5 million number gives me a little bit of concern, especially if you're looking to raise first-year teacher salary. I just want to keep something in mind. If we raise first-year teacher salary by $2,000, we need to raise every salary by $2,000. Because otherwise, all we do every year is create compression. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you, everybody. Good session, start off some good things.